Hi, my name is Molly. I'm a librarian at Victory Branch Library of Ada Community Libraries, and I'm back for another Self-Care Sunday. Now, we are exploring lots of different ways to take care of ourselves, to stay healthy, to lower levels of stress and anxiety during this crazy time. And one of my favorite ways to take care of myself is, of course, reading. Obviously, I'm a librarian. I love books. It's a thing. But I feel like recently, working from home, I have really not only been missing my normal 9 to 5 brick and mortar librarian job, I've really been missing the patrons. I've been missing the books themselves. I've been missing my coworkers. I've been missing checking out books. And I just feel like one of the best books that really makes you feel so connected to the institution of libraries is the library book. And this is by Susan Orlean, one of my favorite books. And of course, it's all about libraries. It's a love letter to libraries, in fact. It's also a really cool book because it talks about one major event in LA, specifically the LA County Public Library. I don't want to spoil the book, so I'm not going to let you know what happened, but let's just say something big happens to this specific library that Orlean talks about, and I highly recommend reading it. And I'll get into some specifics about how to get your hands on library books during this time, so stay tuned for that shortly. I'm just going to read a little snippet from this book all about libraries. And again, this is the library book by Susan Orlean. I grew up in libraries, or at least it feels that way. I was raised in the suburbs of Cleveland, just a few blocks from the brick-faced Bertram Woods branch of the Shaker Heights public library system. Throughout my childhood, starting when I was very young, I went there several times a week with my mother. On those visits, my mother and I walked in together, but as soon as we passed through the door, we split up and each headed to our favorite section. The library might have been the first place I was ever given autonomy. Even then, when I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, I was allowed to head off on my own. Then, after a while, my mother and I reunited at the checkout counter with our finds. Together we waited as the librarian at the counter pulled out the date card and stamped it with the checkout machine. That giant fist thumping the card with a loud chunk, chunk, printing a crooked due date underneath a score of previous crooked due dates that belonged to other people, other times. Our visits to the library were never long enough for me. The place was so bountiful. I loved wandering around the bookshelves, scanning the spines until something happened to catch my eye. Those visits were dreamy, frictionless interludes that promised I would leave richer than I arrived. It wasn't like going to the store with my mom, which guaranteed a tug-of-war between what I wanted and what my mother was willing to buy me. In the library, I could have anything I wanted. Why am I getting emotional? Okay. After we checked out, I loved being in the car and having all the books we'd gotten stacked on my lap, pressing me under their solid, warm weight, their mylar covers sticking a bit to my thighs. It was such a thrill leaving a place with things you hadn't paid for. Such a thrill anticipating the new books we would read. On the ride home, my mom and I talked about the order in which we were going to read our books and how long until they had to be returned. A solemn conversation in which we decided how to pace ourselves through this charmed, evanescent period of grace until the books were due. We both thought all of the librarians at the Bertram Woods Branch Library were beautiful. For a few minutes, we would discuss their beauty. My mother then always mentioned that if she could have chosen any profession at all, she would have chosen to be a librarian. And the car would grow silent for a moment as we both considered what an amazing thing that would have been. When I was older, I usually walked to the library by myself, lugging back as many books as I could carry. Occasionally, I did go with my mother, and the trip would be as enchanted as it was when I was small. Even when I was in my last year of high school and could drive myself to the library, my mother and I still went together now and then, and the trip unfolded exactly as it did when I was a child, with all the same beats and pauses and comments and reveries, the same perfect, pensive rhythm we followed so many times before. When I miss my mother these days, now that she's gone, I like to picture us in the car, going for one more magnificent trip to Bertram Woods. Ooh, so good. Love this book. Amazing book. And I don't mean to get you salivating for a hard copy library book because, as you know, our branches are closed at this moment. But you can get lots of new titles, lots of different kinds of ebooks and audiobooks through the Overdrive or Libby app. So you can go ahead and just download it to any smart device you may have, an iPhone, an Android, even your iPad or a tablet. And what you can do, you can link your library card to the app, and then you can download ebooks and audiobooks to your devices. That's a great way to stay connected, a great way to get your reading fix in, even if it's not a physical copy of a book. So as you can see right here, I was just reading from the library book by Susan Orlean. And what I've done here is I've located my Libby app, and if you have an Ada Community Library card, this is the digital online catalog that you'll be accessing. It's ID8, and of course you can access that through your app as well as the Ada Community Library's website. And what I did is I just typed in the library book, and there you go. There it is. Wow. Yeah, so you don't necessarily need a hard copy library book again to get your reading in. Reading has been a great source of self-care for me during this time. Funny books, lighthearted books, but also books that are about hard times and how to get through those hard times. So do you have a favorite book, whether it's something that you've read recently or something that has been a classic for you in your life that has helped you get through tough times? Do you have a book that makes you laugh like nothing else? Do you have a book that you recommend for somebody to read no matter what the occasion? Let us know in the comments. Send us messages. Keep communicating with us. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks again for joining me for another Self-Care Sunday. I'll see you next week. Bye!